Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing The Gilded Realms from Sandtime Games. The Gilded Realms is a tableau building game which you're going to be building out your city across 12 rounds. This is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. But with that, this is a 2 to 4 player game of trying to build out your civilization as efficiently as possible across 12 rounds. In the game, every single round, and again, there's going to be rules light, just giving you a general overview of the game, how it plays out, but in the game, every single round, you're going to be going ahead and taking cards from this deck, and the first round plays out a little differently, but we won't get into that. You'll be taking out cards over here, and then choosing these cards to either keep keep in your hinterlands and play in future turns, or alternatively to play and build 2 of these cards. When you build a card, you're going to pick which side you want to rotate it to, and then build that particular card into your board in the specific build queue that it shows on the card. So you can build 2 cards, and they'll slowly progress down until they can eventually enter your kingdom. Your last card will go into your hinterlands, where it can stay next turn, and then you can go ahead and pick from that next turn and possibly build that out, or alternatively, you can pay for extra build actions. Now, the reason you're doing all this is because you're going to progress those cards downwards, and those are going to give you a lot of different things to be mindful of. After you build some cards, you're going to go ahead and move these down over here, and then slowly but surely, when they exit the last build queue, they go into your kingdom, at which point military units will go down here to your army to both help with defending as well as going on raids, going on campaigns against other players and against the board itself. Alternatively, you can go ahead and have buildings that are going to enter your kingdom, and those are going to be how you slowly build out these various cards on the table. You're going to have a bunch of cards that are all having different requirements, but once you have those requirements, you can go ahead and discard those buildings, flip this, and now you're at level 1, and look at that, your city has a little bit more built into it. Then you move to level 2, a little bit more built out, then you move to level 3, a little bit more built out, level 4 built out, and level 5, you have a flourishing, thriving grand metropolis over here. But more importantly, as you build these out every single round, you're increasing the income you get every single turn. The township currently doesn't give you anything unless you place a worker there, but over here, you now get a coin, and you get progressively more and more resources each turn as you build out and develop your city. And so you're trying to build out these cards, you're gathering those cards, putting them into your city. At the end of every round, you're going to choose your stance, either going on the defense, going on a military campaign, or going on the economy over here, based on how you rotate the bottom of the style, and then placing them down onto your board to potentially activate getting more resources, and also resolving the year event card over here. Over here, we have a looming threat, something that's going to add more threat to every subsequent military campaign against you, until somebody sends a campaign against that, getting the rewards and vanquishing the looming threat. Cards in this row over here are going to be things that give you, military battles, productive years. So if you're in a worker stance, you'll get extra bonuses over here. And so you're getting either productive things for going into worker stance, or you're getting actual invasions that you have to defend against. That's where you can go into defensive stance to try to mitigate against that. Or you can go on a campaign against other players to try to take some of their cards, or alternatively to deal with the looming threats. There's a bunch of other things happening along the way. You're going to have caravans, so you can go ahead and give resources to these caravans, and then go ahead and sell them at the market. You're going to have an entire row of tech abilities over here that you need to have the requisite ability on your board over here. So you need to upgrade your military to level 1, and then you can buy these level military 1 upgrades. So you can get defense roll, where you have additional defense rolls on your turn. You can have victory parade, wherever you go ahead and survive an assault against you, you can go ahead and add more townspeople to your board over here, because these are utilized for a bunch of different things you can cash them in on, including extra build actions. So you're trying to balance an entire tech tree. You're trying to balance 5 different realms of your civilization that all grow up to level 5 in the game. You're trying to gather a ton of cards so you can go ahead and build out those cards and figure out your pathway to victory. Figure out what capstone you're going to place upon. You're going to have your own individual asymmetrical faction that has its own different way of playing in the game. So you start with a level 1 advisor over here, and as you upgrade your influence track, you can move to level 1 and 2, giving you more bonuses, and they're all highly asymmetrical. This particular faction over here is going to give you a bunch of military units that get special military units that you can add to your queue to, again, be defensive or offensive in those, and every faction comes with its own set of 5 advisors as well, where you'll be able to go ahead and add those advisors both by the Kingdom Advancement card, as you get to the end of the age, and as you buy one of these various texts, you can add up to 3 advisors to your board, giving you more asymmetry to how you're going to progress forward in your experience. You do this across 12 rounds. At the end of 6 rounds, you're going to have the end of era, the end of an age, then 6 more rounds, and then score up everything based on how well you did, which is primarily going to come from how well you built out these hinterland cards, as well as all the various gems you've acquired, as well as a bunch of few other scoring mechanisms in the game. And so that's ultimately how you play the Gilded Realms. Every single round you draw 3 cards, you play those cards, you try to build out your tableau, you try to do that better and more efficiently than other players, and see who has the most points at the end of 12 rounds. Which brings us to the review, starting off with what I like, don't like, well, this brings us to the review with what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is the asymmetrical factions. There are 4 asymmetrical factions in the base game, and they all play highly differently. I believe I've played as 3 of them, and I've played with all 4 of them, so I've seen all of them I play. They all play highly differently in the game as far as the ways you're going to have your own progression forward, whether you're affecting the event tracks over here, whether you have your own market deck, your own individual market deck that gives you your own little, like, fun deck that you're pulling from every round, trying to get progressive benefits from. Whether you're playing as this faction that's going to give you that military might that you can go ahead and throw onto the board in order to be able to have additional defensive or offensive capabilities. They all have their own tweaks, and they all come with 5 advisors, of which you won't see all 5 advisors every game. In a typical game, you'll see 2 of your extra advisors come into play, possibly 3, but you'll never get all 5, which means the way you combine those advisors in different formations is going to give you even more asymmetry on top of your already developed asymmetry in the game, on top of your already starting asymmetry, and that's on top of your developed asymmetry as you build out your own regions in the board, leveling these up in different ways that will give you different benefits, give you different income, allow you to earn additional tech tiles. You're going to have a whole board of tech tiles that you can only buy from depending on how you upgrade your civilization. So there's just a ton of both starting asymmetry and developed asymmetry in the experience, and that asymmetry mostly comes in the form of abilities. Starting abilities from your faction, abilities from your advisors you'll get, and then abilities from the tech tiles that you're going to unlock as you go through that. And between all of those, you just have the ability to grow your civilization in so many different ways as you go through this experience, what you choose to focus on, how you choose to move forward. We didn't talk about this, but you're also going to have a starting quest. In the starting quest, you're going to be given 3 random starting quests. You're going to choose one over here. That's going to define your starting resources, as well as which section of the board you start off with, as well as giving you a goal and various rewards for achieving those goals, and you have to achieve that by the end of round 6 over here, by the end of the first half of the game, and so you have an additional aspect of things to focus on in the game. There's just a very satisfying level of growth across the experience as you throw things down into your board, as you pay to move them fast. Again, we went very rules light over here. You have the ability to pay to push things up over here, so that gives you a choice. Is the resource more important? Do you want to sell that resource at the market to get more points, more money from that? Do you alternatively want to go ahead and progress your build queue so you can start getting more of an income every single round? Because if you can ramp up and get, starting income every single round in round 1, well, it's going to be 12 rounds of getting a resource, getting a stone every single round to be able to pay off into. And so there's a ton of ways to try to figure out what your pathway forward is, which ability tiles are useful, and which ability tiles you better just hold on to and just get points out of instead, out of the currency, out of the money in the game. And so there's a lot of things to be mindful as you try to grow your civilization more efficiently than other players. Now, there's 2 things I don't like in the game. The first thing is that the guesswork on what happens each round is way too present. You have 12 rounds over here, and there is some degree of knowledge. You're going to have a total of 9 cards for each of the eras 1 and 2. From those 9 cards, 3 of them are attack cards, and you know that, and you won't see all of them. So it's possible to have a round with not a single attack. You just don't know that. And as you reveal cards, you can obviously play the odds and say, oh, well, 2 of these cards have been revealed and there's no attack. That means there is a higher chance of one of these being an attack. Let's go ahead and go into defensive stance and see. Sure enough, that's actually a minor invasion, and it's a good thing we were in defensive stance. And by the way, this was really genuinely shuffled, and I didn't know that was an invasion, but I just played the odds and went into defensive stance. And so there is information you can have. And then depending on which faction, one of the factions gives you a lot of visibility to the events, and there's also tech tiles that allow you to go ahead and foresee the future, looking at a bunch of other events that are coming up so you can plan around those. But it still means there's a degree of guesswork involved. You're either paying into knowledge or you're making guesses, and so a player who happened to guess right is going to benefit a little bit more than a player who guessed wrong. And so I don't like the fact that there's a lot of just guesswork of what's coming, and players can accommodate those guesses in different ways, and depending on if you guessed right or wrong, if I guessed that it's going to be a peaceful year and I went into worker stance and you went into defensive stance and I get a productive year and bonuses, that's just a big difference. And of course you can pay to prep for that knowledge, but it's still a factor in the game of just, I don't love it when games kind of force you into just guessing what's going to come, because that can that can heavily benefit the people who guessed right through nothing other than just guesswork. Secondly, for the game, I think it runs too long. And that to me is actually a bigger complaint than the guesswork. As much as I don't like the guesswork aspect, I do find that there are enough things in play that it still feels like a fun experience, just one where sometimes things just feel a bit unfair, but I'm still having fun in my own right as I go through it. So congratulations, you might win because you guessed 2-3 events in a row right, and I didn't, and so there's too large of an extreme, but I'm still having a good time. The second complaint to me is a bigger one, because I do feel that this game, even at lower player counts, just runs a little longer than what I'd like. It's a little repetitive as far as what you're doing every single round, managing those those build queues, pulling things out, and not enough is significantly changing, just past getting stronger. I find it is a game that does drag its feet a little in relation to what you're actually doing in the game, meaning I don't believe in games being too long or too short. I do believe in games being too long or too short for the experience they provide, and to me the Gilded Realms runs maybe 15 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on who you're playing with, depending on the player count. It runs a little longer than I feel the experience actually feels like it should be, so it just feels like a longer experience to me. As far as what I can see others not liking, a few small things. First of all, buying technology versus victory points. I briefly touched upon this already, but the idea that you're constantly being mindful as far as what's going to pay off. And many of the technology tiles, as fun as they might be, sometimes it feels like it's just easier to go ahead and get your hands on gems and resources and all that stuff, as opposed to focusing on trying to get the tech tiles, because the benefit they give versus focusing on just plain victory points, I'm not as confident as far as that balance, and that might be a frustrating position to feel pushed into. There's also randomness in the game. There's a bunch of randomness in different ways, and in ways that are, again, depends on how frequently it affects you, but they're going to have randomness in terms of the market. You're going to have randomness in terms of the marketplace as far as when you sell goods. You're going to be rolling dice to decide to see what benefits you got from selling at the market. It's actually going to be green and red unless you upgrade one of your abilities over there. But you're rolling different dice over here and deciding on the pips based on what you get, and there are big ranges. You can get a 1 on a red, and you can also get a 4 on a red. That's a big swing as far as the dice, and so how you roll dice and what you get out of it when you're selling goods is a big deal. How you roll dice in combat against other players, again, a big swing of randomness. Drawing fortunes in the deck. One thing we didn't talk about, but there's a card called Fortunes, which when you draw them, you basically just get this fortune card and then draw a replacement card, and the fortune card is just a pure extra card that can be used for different things, and so again, a degree of randomness. Now, none of it's crazy in any significant sense, but it is one of those things that too much of a randomness situation where it feels like it's favoring one player over the other, and again, you'll feel those discrepancies, so just be mindful of that as much as there's a lot of agency in the game, there's also a degree of randomness as far as the way things will play out. As far as final thoughts on the Gilded Realms, I overall enjoy the experience. I like building out your civilization. I love the asymmetric factions. I love choosing the advisors of what's right, not just for my faction, but for the current moment, based on the players I'm playing against, based on the strategy of what I'm building towards. The advisors, almost more so than the factions themselves, because both are asymmetry, but one gives me asymmetry that drop more choice. I overall enjoy what's happening in the Gilded Realms. To me, my biggest complaint is that the experience does feel like it runs a little longer than I'd like, relative to what I'm getting out of it, plus of course that aspect of the guesswork into the years themselves. But I like the progression. I like the pathways to victory. I like the building out of your city. And so for me, this is a game that I both enjoy while having critiques around. It's a 3.5 out of 5. I like the experience. I feel like there are areas to possibly tighten more up, or maybe make the text a bit more exciting. Like many of the texts are only exciting as you get to higher levels, and the lower ones a little less so. So I like it, but also want to see a drop more from it. A 3.5 out of 5. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for a fast-moving civ building game that has stood the test of time again and again and again, Seven Wonders is definitely a very highly variable player count game that will play in half an hour and give you a lot of ways to build out and develop the game with a ton of expansions. And if you're looking for a game that's going to give you a whole bunch of asymmetry as well as developed asymmetry, but an entirely different, much heavier realm, Gaia Project's going to give you just a ton of tech management, of trying to build out, you're going to start your civilization with your own asymmetry, you're going to be building things out in different ways, trying to unlock a variety of techs, trying to build out your own personal asymmetry as well as the board. There were some elements of the overall engine that to me felt similar to Gaia Project, while being very different in their manifestation. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.